The way of the world is if you're not hustling and grinding and like 100-hour weeks, you're not gonna make it.
How can I stretch who I am? How can I expand my ability to receive, expand who I am?
Take the action, one little step at a time.
Most people want to be like, okay, well, what do I need to do to get myself to there? But in order for us to even talk about what we're going to do to get there, I need you to be thinking from there.
I think that's the thing is if we keep being open to more and more higher levels, more just comes.
I truly believe that any idea held on the screen of the mind will inevitably become true. And it is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Any idea, negative,
Anything.
positive.
Yes.
My advice is believe, think as big as possible because it really is possible.
Mm-hmm.
But also, and this is the big one for me,
I am so excited for today's interview. Clare Baukham is here, and she is someone that I met a few years ago and took some time to come into my energy. But once she did, really started to change quickly. And I think you're gonna really love the dichotomy between old ways of thinking and new ways of thinking. And so that's what we wanna share today. So welcome back to the podcast. I'm gonna ask her several different questions, but what I hope that you really get from this episode is just how important it is to be true to yourself in what you desire and what you wanna create, why it's so important to be loud and proud about it, and why personal growth and development will change the way you do things and change what you call into your life. So I hope that's what you gain from the universe. So Clare, thank you for being here today.
thank you for having me.
I can't remember how you first found me. Did you find me online? Or I know we live close to one another. We're both
Yes.
Canadian. We both live just outside Toronto.
I was referred to you by another business owner, and she said to me, you should be doing something like this woman is doing, and because she came from Bob Proctor, and she gave me kind of a bit of your background, and I looked at you and I was like, yeah, okay, cool, whatever, right? It was just so not where my mind would go into like the coaching and the spirituality and all, and I was like, whatever. So I followed you or stalked you for about a year. And then, it was, well, the rest of the story.
Yeah. Well, I remember when you started following because you're somebody that you're a very driven woman like me. I think that our energy is very connected in that way. And so when you came into my energy and started following me, I could really feel you and I could feel the desire that you have within yourself to achieve, but to also serve people and make a difference in the world and help people to become wealthier and all that kind of stuff. So I do remember like you were watching and you were paying attention closely, but it took a little while for you to really start to open your mind to some of the concepts and stuff that I was teaching. What do you think was the thing that had you like finally say, okay, I'm ready to learn this. Like I'm ready to open my mind up more.
My life work has been around money and my obsession with money. I owned a flower store. I was an actress. I owned a theater company. I helped my mom and dad with their business. They did very well. I was always about money. Then I started trading the stock market because I was like, okay, just a second. If I have this obsession with money, why don't I do money? That's why we understand each other so well, money and I. So when I saw you, I was like, what is this woman doing to make this much money? I was like, it was more the money that got me to start.
Usually is.
And of course, because it's like, how can it be, right? So it was more that. And then as I got to know you and what you were speaking about, it was very familiar to me because as an actress, a young actress, my director actually guided me into all of this stuff, but hearing it from a female's, because he's a male, hearing it from a female's perspective, just differently delivered, the material being delivered by different people, you'll pick up different things from them, right?
Of course, always. Different frame of reference.
It was the money.
Yeah. That's usually the thing, as I always say, people tend to find me and what they tend to be most interested in is the money part of it. How did you make so much? I want to make more money. I need more in my life, etc. But then once they start to follow me and they start to come into my energy and world, they realize that money is only one small part of this whole picture of wholeness and manifesting all areas of your life being beautiful. And the money side is part of it. Like I do want you to experience more money, but I also want you to be happier and at greater peace and loving yourself more and greater relationships and amazing health and all that. When we first met, I would say, and this is just my interpretation of you, because we were the same person almost before, but you were very much in your masculine energy, and very much in the doing, not the being of success and achievement. So coming from that way of thinking, what do you think the resistance was to going into your feminine?
Well, the way of the world is very much that if you're not hustling and grinding and like working like 100-hour weeks, you're not going to make it. And I think, unfortunately, our previous people who are very successful did that. If you look at any of like the billionaires who are worth hundreds of billions of dollars, most of them did grind it out. However, with you, it was like, well, what if there's a different way? And I was like, no, there's no way. No. And it was like, but then all of a sudden you were teaching me that no, but what if you change that belief? And what if there is another way? And then all of a sudden I started to see success, not necessarily from like working less, but working different. I think that's the thing that's important here is you're not going to be working. Like, I don't like, okay, my husband makes fun of me because he thinks I work very little and I do very well, but he's like, you work, not makes fun, but he thinks it's amazing that I've been able to achieve what I've achieved so far, even being in the masculine. But I think we're thrown into this, you need to be grinding out as hard as possible in order to make it anywhere. And you see it. So you think, well, that's what we have to do. And I still run into a lot of people who think that, but honestly, you're burning yourself out. You don't need to be doing that.
Yeah. What I find is people tend to think that I'm saying that I'm not working hard, but behind the scenes, I actually am.
But you working hard is very different than they're working hard. We're in LA. I ran into a cinematographer yesterday and he's grinding very hard. He's working 3 different jobs. And I said, what if it was different? What if you didn't have to? So your working hard and my working hard is not because it's super fun to us, because we're loving what we're doing. So there's a little bit of a twist there where I think everyone thinks, well, Kathleen doesn't do any work. Well, she's just so lucky her. But yes, you are, and that's amazing.
But I'm in the masculine though, right? Like,
but you have to be both. There's a beautiful balance there, right? But you can't just be masculine and you can't just be feminine and do the vision and all of that, right?
You want to have that balance, which we'll talk about.
Aligned action,
So what do you think then, from where you were before and now after you've studied in this material for a while now and you're really starting to embody that for you, what were those feminine energetics? And we're not talking about male versus female. We're just talking about the nurturing, the new beliefs, the intellectual mind, the different ways of being. What would you say are the feminine energies that you've incorporated now that have made a difference?
My problem was always, okay, but how? How? I have the vision. I could do that side of the feminine energy. I could have the big vision. I could think of all of those things, but it was the how. But as soon as I let the how go, a really good example that I use is I have a beautiful relationship with my husband. We've been together for 20 plus years. I manifested that, but I didn't think about how I could do it. It just did. I just let it go and it just happened. And now I have the most wonderful relationship that I know of. Building a business is the same thing. If you have the vision of, okay, I want to, like with a relationship, I want to love this person and I want to have a beautiful, wholesome relationship where we're like teammates as well as lovers, great. The how will just work itself out. The same goes with building a business. So it was that for me in that.
Well, I think what the masculine says is I need to control the how. I need the 17 steps. So I get a lot of people that come to me and they're like, okay, Kathleen, I understand that you've manifested all this. Can you tell me the 17 steps that you took in order to do it?
Because they feel like if they don't have the control, it's never going to happen. And then the impatience starts. But again, the more you let it go and just become the person there at that end, whatever the end may be, the faster it comes. Here I am. All of a sudden, I got here. I told you when I arrived that when I got here, I'm in this big mini mansion and I'm uncomfortable. But it's in that being uncomfortable and understanding that energy that all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I belong here. Cool. And then boom, quantum leap happens. Then more things start showing up for you because you're that person.
And it's all expansion. So that's how I really like to look at how can I stretch who I am? How can I expand my ability to receive, expand who I am? So what happens is when we go into a big space, so what Claire was telling us before we started recording is that she's staying in a space that's a lot bigger than what she's used to staying in. At first, when she was in there, she felt uncomfortable, like, ooh, is this too big for us? Mm-hmm. And so she noticed and became aware, and that's where self-awareness is so big. And she became aware that what was actually happening is that she is now starting to expand, and her consciousness wanted to go back. It wanted to be like, oh no, let's go to a smaller space.
Safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily what we want. Like, we want to expand, we want to grow, we want to be in bigger spaces and have more money and larger experiences. But because we're used to the comfort of the smaller space, we will move ourselves back into it. So I think it's beautiful awareness that you notice it, shifted it, and said, no, like, I am meant to be here. I am worthy of this. I'm going to allow my energy to expand into this. I also call, when you go into spaces like that, I call them energetic upgrades as well.
Yeah.
So I will very consciously and on purpose put myself into a new environment that's an energetic upgrade.
Yes.
To help my consciousness expand.
Yeah.
So I think it's beautiful that you're doing that. Now, last year, while you were in the inner circle, you made a big change. You made a big shift.
Yes.
And I know you were pretty quiet about it for much of the time.
Yes.
But you did that. And I want to talk a little bit about that. We had Deepika on the podcast as well. She was also a member of the inner circle. And she did the same thing. She made a huge change in her life. And so I would love to hear your perspective of how did it feel to transition like that and make that? And what do you think the beliefs were that you held that allowed you to do that?
Man, how did it feel? It did not feel scary. Yeah.
That's good.
I thought it would. Yeah. Because it did for years. So what I did was I was a fully licensed financial advisor, and I dropped my broker license. And now I am a elite wealth strategist. So what I do instead of managing people's money directly is they'll either manage it themselves with my strategies, or I'll put them with the proper financial advisor. But it's all about the strategy. And really quickly, I keep getting these beautiful signs that I'm on the right path. When I flew up here because I live in Mexico in the winter, I ran into a guy who's managing a couple $2 billion, and I said to him, I asked him about a few strategies that he's using, and he's like, I don't use that stuff. And I said, what do you mean? He said, oh no, yeah, that's like too much work. And I was like, oh my gosh. So that was just such a beautiful sign for me that I'm on the right track, that people with 25, 50, $100 million, they've got these managers like this, and these guys aren't doing anything. They're doing okay. They're managing their money. They're making them a return. But what about all the strategies? You think these guys, when they die, for example, they have 50 million bucks, you think they want to give 20 to the IRS or the CRA if you're in Canada? No. Like, this is how Rockefeller built their generational wealth. So I've had such beautiful signs along the way.
What do you think the beliefs were that you instilled in yourself that had you make a change? Because there's a lot of people that won't, they're too afraid to transition.
That's a scary change, especially when you're in such a regulated environment. I'm very big, especially since working with you, of actually listening to my intuition is very strong, and I get big signs. So I'm very big on listening to those, and like that on the plane that I got that, and that's after the fact. But beforehand, oh man, I was getting signs. It just was. It wasn't, oh, I believe this will work, or I didn't have to talk myself into anything. It was just there. It showed up for me. And honestly, I have been like racking my brain for years prior to doing the work with you guys about how to make this change. And then all of a sudden, I think it started when we were in the mansion in Bel Air.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about that a little bit.
Where I was like, oh my gosh, I think there's another way here for me where I can go even bigger and help more people. For me, it's all about sharing that gift that I have with people. And we get compensated really well, and that's awesome. That's what it was.
So what I noticed with you over the course of like the year and a half, maybe, we were in each other's energy for a fair bit there. For you to even sign up for the Millionaire Program at first, it was a tough decision. It took you time. It wasn't like I'm in, I got this, I trust myself, let's go. It took time. But here we are, less than like a year later, and you're letting go of your licenses to be a financial planner, and you're over here starting this whole wealth strategy, this new business, and it's ease and effortlessness.
Yeah.
Because you can't even tell me how you did it so easy. It was just so easy because it was a new pattern and program. So that's a big difference. That's a big shift from, this fear base of whether or not you should invest to changing drastically your entire business model. So it's just evidence of this work. But what I want to just tell the listeners about this Bel Air mansion, in my inner circle last year in March, I wanted to do our inner circle day in Malibu. Mm-hmm. And so I was going to take everybody somewhere in Malibu for the day, because you guys know how much I love Malibu. But then I had this thought, and I had manifested a friendship with an interior designer who had designed a $68 million mansion in Bel Air Canyon. And I'd been in the house multiple times. And I had an intuitive hit: come in, take them to the mansion. And so I reached out to the owner of the home, and I manifested the opportunity for us to mastermind in that house all day. And we had a private chef come and do breakfast and lunch for us. So when we're talking about the Bel Air mansion, that's what Claire's talking about. I had everybody go in the Sprinter vans up to this house, and they didn't know they were going in it. This thing is 20,000 square feet, I think.
Yeah.
It is probably one of the most stunning properties I have ever seen. And when people go into it right away, they say, oh, this is too big. I could never live here. Not me. I went in there and I was like, I am open to receive this level of abundance. Not necessarily like if I had the means and the capacity in this moment, is this the house that I would necessarily purchase? I don't know. But am I open to receive this level of abundance to be able to? Yes, please.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We belong in there.
Yeah. So what did it feel like when you first went into the house?
Oh, man. It was overwhelming in such a good way. You had us, we got to kind of mingle around and meet the other inner circle members. And then you had us journal, and I picked this spot on the edge of the couch where I could put my feet up and just write and look out at the canyon view. And I started crying. Mm-hmm. And for such a woman who used to be in the masculine, it's like, we don't really cry like that, right? Yeah. And I started bawling. And one of your manifestation mentors came over to me, you came over to me, and you were like, what's going on here? And I said to you, oh my God, this is it. I belong here. And this is what I've been waiting for so long. Mm. And I did not leave that place the same woman that I came as. Mm. And honestly, I have had several of those since we've been working together, but even since we've not seen each other, just because I keep taking the work with me as we go. And I hear you. And sometimes I still listen to you. And then some of the members chat, and some of your current members, if we chat or not, and then you just remind each other. It's like we're this little army that gets together, like very glamorous and chic army, obviously. We're not like it. We're not rugged. Yeah. And then we go off into the world to spread more of this. Here I am in an Uber talking to my cinematographer who's overworked about what would you love.
I love that. It's so beautiful. And what I really wanted to do with that house is I didn't want you guys to just go in there and get a tour of a $68 million home.
You need to feel
I wanted you to feel what it felt like to live there. Yeah. So that's why I had everybody take their shoes off, sit down, journal. Beata was swimming in the pool.
You know what?
I loved it.
I will never forget the feeling of that floor beneath my feet.
Yeah.
I was in bare feet, walking around there and getting to feel the feeling. That was it. Yeah. That was what did it for everyone.
Yep.
So like you said before, putting yourselves in these situations where you can feel that elevation, it feels uncomfortable sometimes. And some people, like you said, were like, oh, this isn't for me or whatever. Yep. It was for me. It was definitely. And I think that's the thing is if we keep being open to more and more higher levels, more just comes.
Yeah, it does. It creates demand. I think the other thing that happened that day too is it built a desire in you.
Yeah.
And when you desire something outside of the experience that you're currently observing, you are more willing to be daring, be bold, take risks.
Yeah.
Like you're more willing to persist.
Yes.
So we know that this journey is not always linear. So it's not like everything's going to be super, super easy every single day. No. There's going to be days where you're going to go like, what am I doing? Like,
Yes.
But when you have that desire and you have that focal point and you have that place that you're thinking from, it makes it so much easier to be like, no, I got this. It's okay. We'll move on. Like it's all working out.
Yes. It creates the how.
I always say the how will unfold itself and it will reveal itself upon the way.
Yes.
And the how is through you, and it's your intuition.
Yes.
Even when you were talking about the example of meeting the gentleman and him talking about the wealth strategies he's not using.
Yeah.
That was your intuition speaking to you through
Yeah.
the meeting of someone, but you have to trust yourself to listen to it.
That's just it. And I think that's where I was lucky because I had developed that for years prior. That was kind of the beginning of I guess the how, if you want to put it that way. And I think you're exactly right, is that created the desire to reach for me.
Yeah.
Because then it was like, okay, hang on a second. If I can't get there in my current capacity with my business, what do I have to do to tweak that? And then you start getting ideas. And trust me, there were ideas that it was like, that's dumb. Forget it. And I would just scrap, okay, keep going. That doesn't feel right.
Yep.
Go this way. And then I just kind of like followed the path along and it just presented itself to me. And honestly, I have not told this story publicly. I was sitting there with my compliance officers. It was like this dark, scary room with no windows. And they were questioning me and saying to me, like, you can't live the lifestyle you're living and you shouldn't be doing this. And you said you're flying private and you're not flying. That was when we were booking the one to go to Paris Fashion Week. You can't fly private. And I was like, you're misleading clients. And I was like, whoa, that was just the last little bit to show me that I don't belong in that world, that I belong in a world where I can actually get to people and help people and be free to help people open their minds and their portfolios and grow.
How interesting. They showed you the box you were living in so you could
crazy.
free yourself from it.
Oh, it was crazy.
And that is one of the most powerful things that I've learned to do, is to become aware of the ways in which I believe I'm limited. So notice my language. I'm not saying the ways in which I am limited, because a lot of people think that the outside world limits them. But when you actually take self-responsibility, you realize I'm limiting myself by allowing them to limit me. So I am very, very aware of my limitations, and then I change the limiting belief. I don't let it be real anymore. And then that changes my whole existence. But for you, what would you say is a limit that you used to have that you no longer have in your mind?
I used to think that I needed to be in the office 50, 60 hours a week. I needed to be in front of clients in person all the time. And if I didn't, I wouldn't be successful. I used to think that I would need to write X amount of millions of business every year. And then honestly, when I started to write that, it didn't make a difference anyway. So it was like, okay, that's also where that belief started to change up for me, because even when you achieve it, and then also the grinding was huge for me. I would just sit and if I wasn't at the desk, I would feel guilty for it. Oh, that was awful.
I used to feel that way.
Awful.
The feeling like you always have to be productive.
Yes.
The feeling of productivity would actually make you feel worthy.
Yes.
It would actually make you feel good.
Yes.
To do it.
Yeah.
And then the moment you wouldn't do it, you would feel less than, or like you should be.
Or having like those numbers show up on the board at my old firm, that they would show your sales. And if you weren't making sales, you weren't being productive.
Oh, wow.
Right. Oh, it was just like, so this is the conditioning that you have in that corporate world. It's tough. It's tough to break out. It's tough to really, how many people are in those roles and they can't stand it and they don't want to go to work, and it's TGIF, and I don't do TGIF because every day is great.
I don't even know the day of the week.
I don't. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's freedom. That's true freedom.
It is.
So for those that are listening today that are not happy with what they're currently doing and they're heavy in the masculine and they can't see an out, what advice would you give them? What would you tell them?
You need to have the biggest vision possible for yourself, and you really need a win outside of like your regular sales thing. You need like a win on your intuitive hit, if you will. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have a vision of, like, ask yourself, what would you love? You guys always used to do this to me. Some of your mentors used to do this to me. Claire, what would you love? What would you love? I'm like, I don't know what I would love.
Yeah.
What would you love? Write it down. Start to dream. Just allow yourself, like, let go for a few minutes and allow yourself to dream. And once that starts to come to you, go all the way to the end, and then you'll start to work yourself back to where you are today. You really don't have to be where you are today.
Yeah. And the what would you love, where I first got that from and why I started to use that was because I started to notice that people were thinking from what they currently see. So they were thinking from the business they have today, from the bank account they have today, from their current health. And when you're observing your current reality and then you have a feeling about it, you're calling more of that in. You're a vibrational match to it.
Yep.
And so most people want to be like, okay, well, what do I need to do to get myself to there?
Yeah.
But in order for us to even talk about what we're going to do to get there, I need you to be thinking from there.
Exactly.
So the what would you love is just a beautiful little journal prompt or question that I ask. It takes people away from what they're observing and moves them immediately into what I would love. So now they're in the imagination. Now they're in the fourth dimension. Now they're thinking from a different place.
Yeah.
And so when you start to go and think from that new place, your mind is now open.
Yeah.
Whereas before the mind was closed.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's just a little bit about that. Okay. Tell us about Queen of the North. Where did that come from? What does it mean? Because I think it's a good example of a way in which people can adopt titles, names, egos, personas.
Okay. So I live in Mexico in the winter, right? We have a place in Puerto Vallarta. And I must have been talking to Andrew, my husband, and he said to me, you know, you got to like be in your character. And I was like, okay, what? I'm an actor. I used to be an actor, right? So I get it. I'm like, okay, yeah. I'll be in the character, whatever, rolling my eyes at him, right? He said this was last winter. So it might have been after I had seen you guys. And, you know, after you have such a high at the mansion, you'll start to have a little bit of a low, very natural, right? And now I deal with those much differently.
Good.
But he said to me, you know the show, The Queen of the South? About Teresa Mendoza. She's like the leader of the drug cartel. Of course, my husband puts me into like a drug cartel situation. He's you're like this powerful woman.
Oh my gosh.
So he said, well, you're like Teresa Mendoza. You're like the Queen of the South. And I'm like, well, we don't live in the South though, babe. And he's like, well, you're the Queen of the North. Ooh. And at the same time, Shannon Beardsmore had said to me, yeah, you're like the Queen of the North. I forget how and which one came in first, but they kind of both said it simultaneously and it was freaky. Yeah. So she's like, wait, she said there was somebody else named that, but she's like, but that's a different connotation. She's like, you're the Queen of the North. And I said, what does the Queen of the North even mean? And she says, well, you're like the queen of investments and money. You're like a money guru. She's like, you're not like a drug cartel owner. You're a money and wealth business owner. And she's like, you're the Queen of the North. And she's like, step into that. And that was kind of it. Yeah, however, since then, Deepika, who you had on, she's my publisher. And she came to me and she says, yeah, you are the Queen of the North, but you're also the billionaire woman. And you're going to write the book called The Billionaire Woman. So that's it.
I love that. Now is that the name of your book?
The Billionaire Woman.
Oh,
yeah. Now she calls me the Billionaire Woman. She's like, you know what? The Billionaire Woman wouldn't do this. She would do this. So,
yeah. And it's so good because whenever we do create that persona, I don't like to use the language alter ego. I know we teach a little bit of alter ego stuff in Diamond Academy, but I think it's a good strategy, but I also think it's kind of like pretending or turning a character on. Yeah. Whereas for me, it's about, if I create this persona or this identity or this self-concept, then all I have to do is just be it every day in every way. Yeah. Practice being it. Yeah. Be in the state of being. So for me, it's KCB. So being in the state of being of KCB now, I just walk wearing those shoes every day. And it becomes effortless and easy. And I'm not asking like, how can I be more her or how can I turn it on? It's just who I am.
I think for people who are starting, it's good for them to use that character build feeling because it feels super foreign. When you keep changing it up and moving, I don't want to say up because up versus down is a bad, you know what I mean, has a negative connotation. But for people just starting and they're like, what are you guys even talking about? Yeah. Create this character. You at first, when I first met you, I think you were just KC. Yeah. Or, you were. KC. That's right. You were not just, but you were KC. Yeah. Not
there
KCB.
Was no B.
There was no B. And so you think to yourself, okay, like the Queen of the North, how does she act? How does she walk? What does she think? Like, how does she dress? So even now, even though I may not refer to myself as character, even though Deepika and other people do, I think it's cute because people are starting to relate me to luxury and money and wealth, private jets. Random people will send me a private jet because they know that I'm going to get a jet, right? Yeah. So people will start to auto-suggest the character to you Because you'll say to them, well, I'm KCB. And now people are like, well, she's a billionaire. She's KC the billionaire. They'll start to throw it at you in a good way.
Yeah.
Right? So, but it's a really good starting point, a little like anchor, if you will, to keep going back and being like, just a second. KC wouldn't do that. She wouldn't be upset about this little fight or whatever. She would deal with it like this. So sometimes, yeah, I think removing it from you, it's so difficult when you're in your own craziness, you know, because you think to yourself, how am I supposed to become that person? Just, you kind of have to, I don't want to like act as if almost in a way.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it feels natural. I think I've told you the story about when, I have my baby, Henrik, he's 5 now. He's not a baby anymore, but I had a second baby and I lost him about halfway through the pregnancy. It was a very, very bad situation. But afterwards I weighed, I don't know, about 65 pounds more than I weigh now. I used to be a fitness athlete. I used to compete with my husband. He used to be a bodybuilder. So I kept telling myself every morning, no matter how my body was feeling or looking, I'm an athlete. I'm an athlete. I'm an athlete. It felt dumb at first. I was like, what the hell am I doing? I'm not an athlete. Look at me, blah, blah, blah. All the negative self-talk was happening. This is like the perfect example. I'm an athlete. I'm an athlete every single day. It was sickening, actually, how much I said it to myself. I'm in the gym. We have a basement gym. We have a full commercial gym in the basement. I'm doing the things. I'm eating the things. While I'm eating, I'm like, I'm an athlete. This is what an athlete would drink the water.
Like an athlete.
Yes. Then all of a sudden, guess what happened? I was an athlete. I was 65 pounds less than what I was. My muscle was starting to show. My abs were starting to show. And I was like, oh my God, it worked.
Yeah.
I believed it.
Yeah.
But I believed it maybe, you know, months before that, but there it was. It just showed up for me, right? So if you keep telling yourself that you're something, you will be. If you keep telling yourself that, changing your belief, if you keep telling yourself, I can make $1 million, $1 million is easy to make, then it will be. But if you say like, oh, LA's got a lot of traffic, this is hard, it's hard to get everywhere, it will be. It's whatever you say, right?
Yeah, I love that so much. I truly believe that any idea held on the screen of the mind will inevitably become true. It will harden into fact. And it will become your truth. And it is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Any idea, negative, positive.
Yes. Any idea.
I'm going to get sick. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You might.
Too.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Claire, this has been such a beautiful interview. And it's been so lovely to have you on the show. Any last minute words for anybody that is still in that like heavy masculine, working really hard type of energy. And they're obviously listening to this because they feel the call to think differently. What advice would you give them?
My advice is believe, think as big as possible because it really is possible. But also, and this is the big one for me, you got to do the work. Because it's not going to be hard work. It's going to be fun because you're changing your life and you're up-leveling yourself. You got to take the aligned action. I think that's the biggest missing piece is everyone has the vision and they know what they want to do and the belief is there and the whole cool. Take the action. One little step at a time. I didn't jump from where I was a year and a half ago to here. It took me a year and a half. Take those steps.
And we just want to make sure that everyone understands that when she means do the work, she doesn't mean work hard. She means do the personal growth and development work.
Yes.
Do the mindset work. Yes. Reprogram your beliefs.
Inside.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, surrender, think from a more elevated place, expand yourself, all that stuff. Thank you so much, Claire, for coming onto the podcast.
For having me.
And thank you everybody for listening. And remember that the limit does not exist.